like they want to get into individual things in their own, or maybe they might want to get into other things besides music.
The man who completely changed the way people approached the guitar and blew everyone's mind in the late 60s was none other than the iconic Jimi Hendrix. While he was a genius on stage, his life off stage was full of secrets and mysteries. And now, over 5 decades later, Jimi Hendrix's son has come forward to confirm some rumors that have been floating around for years. Rumors that, until now, were just whispers among fans. But what was the big secret that Jimi Hendrix took to his grave? And why is his son choosing now to share it with the world? Let's find out. Early life. Jimi Hendrix was born into a world full of history and culture. His roots were deep, tracing back to African American and alleged Cherokee heritage. This fascinating lineage started with his paternal grandfather, Bertrand Philander Ross Hendrix. Bertrand, born in 1866, was the result of an extramarital affair between a woman named Fanny and one of the wealthiest grain merchants in the region, either from Urbana, Ohio, or Illinois. This scandalous history did not just stop with his grandparents, it repeated itself later in Jimi's own life. How exactly? Stick around till the end to find out. On the other side of his family, Jimi's paternal grandmother, Zenora, brought her own flair. Zenora was a former dancer and vaudeville performer, a woman of talent and ambition. She co-founded the Fountain Chapel in Hogan's Alley, which was a community hub in its own right. Bertrand and Zenora eventually made their way to Vancouver, Canada, where they settled down and had a son, James Allen Hendrix, born on June 10, 1919. Known to his family as Al, James Allen would grow up to become the father of the legendary Jimi Hendrix. Then in 1941, Al moved to Seattle, Washington. It was here that he met Lucille Jeter at a dance. Lucille came from a family with a deep African American heritage, with roots tracing back to ancestors who had been enslaved. Al and Lucille fell in love and quickly got married on March 31, 1942. But life was not about to get any easier. Just 3 days after their wedding, Al was drafted into the U.S. Army to serve in World War II. While Al was away, Lucille gave birth to their first child, Johnny Allen Hendrix, on November 27, 1942 in Seattle. This child would later become the Jimi Hendrix we all know. In 1946, Johnny's parents decided to change his name to James Marshall Hendrix in honor of Al and his late brother Leon Marshall. But even before Jimi was born, his father faced challenges. Stationed in Alabama, Al was denied a furlough to see his newborn son. Instead, he was thrown into a stockade by his commanding officer, accused of wanting to go AWOL. He spent 2 months locked up without a trial and received the news of his son's birth while in confinement. During Al's 3-year absence, Lucille struggled immensely. With a new baby and no husband to help, family members and friends, especially Lucille's sister Dolores Hall and her friend Dorothy Harding, stepped in to care for little Jimi. When Al finally returned in 1945, he reunited with his family in Berkeley, California, seeing his son for the first time. But the reunion was bittersweet. The post-war years were tough for the Hendrix family. Al struggled to find steady work, and both he and Lucille battled with alcohol. Their frequent arguments, sometimes violent, created a stressful environment for young Jimi, a sensitive and shy child who often hid in a closet to escape the chaos around him. Through all the hardships, though, Jimi found solace in music. It became his refuge and passion, a small light in an otherwise challenging childhood. So how did he enter this new world of music? His passion. It all began in the mid-1950s when young Jimi was just a student at Horace Mann Elementary School in Seattle. He had this quirky habit of carrying around a broomstick, pretending it was a guitar. This kid was so enthralled with the idea of making music that he could not wait to get his hands on a real instrument. This caught the eye of the school's social worker, who was concerned enough to write a letter requesting funds to buy Jimi a real guitar. She was worried that if he didn't have one, it might affect him psychologically. Unfortunately, her efforts did not pay off, and Jimi's father refused to buy him a guitar. But as fate would have it, in 1957, Jimi stumbled upon something that would change everything. While helping his father with a side job, they were clearing out an older woman's home. Among the junk and trash, Jimi found a ukulele with just one string. The woman kindly let him keep it, and that's when Jimi's self-taught musical journey began. He started picking out tunes by ear, even figuring out how to play Elvis Presley's Hound Dog on that single string. It was not much, but it was enough to spark a passion that would only grow stronger. However, Jimmy's life was never without its share of heartbreak. In 1958, tragedy struck again when his mother, Lucille, passed away from cirrhosis of the liver. That same year, Jimmy finished his studies at Washington Junior High School and started attending Garfield High School, though he did not graduate. But amidst all the challenges, something good finally happened. At the age of 15, Jimmy got his hands on his first acoustic guitar, bought for just $5. It was his prized possession, and he spent hours every day practicing, soaking up everything he could from more experienced guitarists and listening to blues legends like Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Howlin' Wolf, and Robert Johnson. It was not long before Jimmy formed his first band, the Velvetones. But playing in a band without an electric guitar was tough, as he struggled to be heard. Recognizing his son's growing talent and need for better equipment, Al finally bought Jimmy his first electric guitar around mid-1959. It was a white Supro Ozark. Jimmy was now unstoppable. His first gig was at the Jaffe Room of Seattle's Temple de Hirsch, but his tendency to show off got him kicked out after just one set. Undeterred, he joined another band, the Rocking Kings, and began playing professionally at venues like the Birdland Club. But the road was not smooth either. After leaving his guitar backstage overnight, it was stolen. Al, understanding how important music was to Jimmy, replaced it with a red Silvertone Dan Electro. He wanted to make sure Jimmy could keep his musical dreams alive. Before he even turned 19, Jimmy found himself in trouble with the law. He was caught twice riding in stolen cars. Faced with the choice between prison and the Army, Jimmy chose the latter and enlisted on May 31, 1961. After basic training, he was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Even in the Army, Jimmy's passion for music never wavered. He asked his father to send his guitar, and it was not long before he was jamming with fellow servicemen. One of them, Billy Cox, recognized Jimmy's unique talent, and together they formed a band called the Casuals, performing at bass clubs on weekends. Jimmy's time in the Army was brief, but intense. He completed his paratrooper training and earned the prestigious Screaming Eagles patch in January 1962. However, his obsession with music led to neglect of his military duties, and by May of that year, his platoon sergeant recommended his discharge because he felt Jimmy had a lack of interest in the Army. On June 29, 1962, Jimmy received a general discharge under honorable conditions. Little did anyone know Jimi Hendrix's musical journey was just getting started, and the world was about to witness something extraordinary. So how did he rise to fame after all those years? Rise to fame. When Jimi Hendrix arrived in London, his life was about to take a turn that would not only define his career, but also leave an indelible mark on the world of music. It all began when Chas Chandler, who was a former bassist for The Animals, saw the potential in Hendrix and decided to create a band that would broadcast his extraordinary talents. Chandler's first plan was to find the right musicians to complement Hendrix's genius. Chandler recruited guitarist Noel Redding, who caught Hendrix's attention with his understanding of blues progressions and his distinctive hairstyle. Next up was drummer Mitch Mitchell, who shared a deep love for rhythm and blues, making him a perfect fit for the band. The band's first big introduction to the London music scene came on October 1, 1966, when Chandler took Hendrix to a Cream performance at the London Polytechnic. Hendrix, never one to shy away from the spotlight, asked to join Cream on stage. What followed was a jaw-dropping performance that left even Eric Clapton, one of the greatest guitarists of that time, in complete awe. Clapton later admitted that Hendrix's skills were unlike anything he had ever seen. He called the experience life-changing. In mid-October 1966, Chandler arranged for the Jimi Hendrix Experience to support Johnny Hallyday on a short tour of France. Their first show on October 13th at the Olympia Theatre in Paris was a smashing success. The band's 15-minute performance was recorded, marking the first known recording of the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Back in London, the Experience recorded Hey Joe on October 23, 1966, followed by Hendrix's first original song, Stone Free. The band's unique sound and Hendrix's magnetic stage presence soon caught the attention of music icons like Paul McCartney and Mick Jagger, who were blown away by their performances at London venues like the Bag o' Nails nightclub. The release of Hey Joe on December 16, 1966, marked the beginning of the Jimi Hendrix Experience's rise to fame. The single climbed the UK charts, peaking at number 6, and their follow-up single, Purple Haze, released in March 1967, reached number 3. But it was not just the music that captivated audiences. Hendrix's dramatic stage presence, including his now famous act of setting his guitar on fire, made him a sensation. This stunt, which was first performed at the London Astoria on March 31, 1967, earned Hendrix the nicknames Black Elvis and the Wild Man of Borneo. Hendrix's fame reached new heights with his performance at the Monterey Pop Festival in June 1967. This performance, where he famously set his guitar on fire, was immortalized in the documentary Monterey Pop and helped him gain immense popularity in the United States. The world had never seen anything like Jimi Hendrix, and it was clear that his musical journey was only just beginning. The combination of his electrifying performances, innovative music, and undeniable charisma made him a global sensation, and he quickly became one of the most influential musicians of his time. But behind all that fame was a very complex personal life that no one knew about. Personal life. Jimi Hendrix's personal life was as electrifying and unpredictable as his music. It all started with his first serious relationship during his teenage years with Betty Jean Morgan. This romance was special, but it ended when Jimi joined the army to avoid a prison sentence. Even though they were separated, Betty Jean left a deep mark on Jimi's heart. He even carved her name into his second guitar, a small but telling gesture of how much she meant to him. As Jimi's career began to take off, he found himself in another intense relationship with Lithuanian Pridgeon, who became known as Foxy Lady. Their relationship was passionate, and she inspired one of his most famous songs, Foxy Lady. Then, in 1966, Diane Carpenter entered Jimi's life. Their relationship was filled with ups and downs, mainly due to financial struggles and jealousy. Eventually, Diane moved back to Minneapolis, where she gave birth to their daughter, Tamika. Because of Jimi's demanding touring schedule, he did not even know about his daughter for several months. This is how chaotic his life had become. Another important figure in Jimi's life was Devin Wilson, who was known for her beauty and her deep connections in the music world. Devin and Jimi's relationship was intense and full of drama, and she inspired songs like Dolly Dagger. Unfortunately, they also broke up due to jealousy and turmoil. And then, Kathy Etchingham was Jimi's girlfriend during the peak of his fame, and their bond was strong. Kathy inspired several of Jimi's songs, including The Wind Cries Mary. But as Jimi's career demands grew, the pressures became too much, and they eventually went their separate ways. In 1969, Jimi had a brief but significant relationship with a Swedish woman named Eva Sundquist. She gave birth to their son, James Daniel Sundquist, but Jimi never got the chance to meet him. It was not until years later that James was officially recognized as Jimi's child. Another important person in Jimi's life was Carmen Barrero, who was a former Playboy Club bunny. Their relationship was passionate but also troubled. There were moments of violence, like one incident where Jimi attacked Carmen in a jealous rage. He attacked her so violently that she had to get medical attention. As Jimi's life grew more stressful, he found some comfort in a relationship with Kirsten Neffer, a Danish model. They got together in 1970 during what would be Jimi's final months. Their relationship was brief, but it seemed to give Jimi a bit of peace during a very chaotic time in his life. The last important woman in Jimi's life was Monika Dannemann, who was a German figure skater. She was with him during his final days. Beyond his relationships, Jimi also struggled with substance use and the pressures that came with fame. It all began in July 1962 when Jimi spent most of his army savings on drinks at a club in Tennessee. This was the start of a long battle with alcohol, which often led to angry outbursts and physical confrontations. In the mid-1960s, Jimi's experimentation with substances became more frequent. While he had tried marijuana and amphetamines before, it was not until he got into the psychedelic scene that things really escalated. By 1967, Jimi was deeply involved in the counterculture movement, using substances to fuel his creativity and cope with the pressures of his rising fame. But this also brought out a darker side of Jimi, where his usually calm demeanor could turn volatile. Those close to him noticed that when Jimi was under the influence, he could become angry and destructive. In January 1968, while on a European tour, Jimi got into a drunken fight in Sweden, which resulted in a serious hand injury and some legal trouble. His behavior continued to become more erratic as the pressures of fame took their toll. In 1969, after a burglary at his house in California, Jimi, under the influence, accused a friend of stealing from him and attacked him. Shortly after, he violently assaulted his girlfriend, Carmen Barrero, in a fit of jealousy and caused her serious injury. Jimi's legal troubles reached a peak on May 3, 1969, when he was stopped at Toronto International Airport and authorities found substances in his luggage. Jimi was charged with possession, and he faced a stressful trial. He claimed that he did not know what was in the vial, saying it had been given to him by a fan. He was eventually acquitted. Through all the highs and lows, Jimi Hendrix's personal life was as complex and intense as his music, filled with passion, turmoil, and a relentless drive for creativity. And then just like that, his electrifying life came to an end. What really happened on Jimi Hendrix's last day? Death. The details are still unclear. You see, on September 17, 1970, Jimi spent the day with Monica Dannemann, the only person who witnessed his last hours. They returned to her apartment late that night, but the next morning Monica found Jimi unconscious and unresponsive. He was taken to St. Mary Abbott's Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on September 18, 1970. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxia, caused by inhaling vomit while under the influence of barbiturates. Despite this, the coroner recorded an open verdict, indicating that the exact circumstances of his death remain uncertain. Jimi's body was flown to Seattle, where he was buried next to his mother in Greenwood Cemetery. His funeral was attended by over 200 people, including many well-known musicians and friends. At 27, Jimi's untimely death added him to the infamous 27 Club, marking the end of a brilliant yet brief life. So what are these rumors that we are hearing now? Why have they resurfaced 5 decades after his death? The rumors. You see, Jimi Hendrix left behind more than just his legendary music. For years, rumors swirled about whether Jimi Hendrix had fathered any children. During his lifetime, Jimi never publicly acknowledged having kids, but recently his children have told the truth themselves. His first, Tamika Hendrix, was born on February 11, 1967 in Minneapolis from his relationship with Diane Carpenter. Diane lived with Jimi briefly before returning to Minneapolis when she became pregnant. Jimi's second child, James Daniel Sundquist, was born on October 5, 1969, in Stockholm after a brief romance with Eva Sundquist. Despite being recognized by Swedish courts in 1975, this paternity decision was made without DNA testing. James, who bears a strong resemblance to his famous father, lives a private life in Stockholm. After Jimi's death, Diane tried to secure a portion of Jimi's inheritance for Tamika, but the attempt was unsuccessful. James succeeded in his claim in the late 1970s, and he earned legal recognition as Jimi's son. He confirmed this rumor to the public that he was indeed the son of the legendary guitarist and songwriter Jimi Hendrix. Do you think Jimi had known about his children before his death? Share your opinions with us in the comments below. If you want to hear more shocking stories, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel, because we have got a lot more of this. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.